I would want you guys to close your eyes. So I'll be asking few questions and discussing, and pretty much you guys will be able to relate and stuff. So what we are doing in this video is we are trying to compare. So before that, let me go to this. See, we studied about solid and we studied about liquids or fluids. In solids, we saw that, two objects can slide over each other, roll over each other, right? And in liquids also, we saw that we can talk about laminar flow, and in that we have layers. And we can treat each of this layer and their relative velocity and all of that, and we can see that they resist. And this leads to something called as viscous, the stickiness per se. And because of which we see that honey and water, right, they flow at a different rate. If I take a drop of honey and take a drop of water, same amount in terms of volume, if it's the same. If I drop them on any surface, slant surface, water will flow down so fast, while honey will take its own time, right? So that is your resistance to flow basically. Now, both are to do with some kind of resistance to motion. So do this friction from the solid and this viscous thing, are they related? Are there any similarities, differences? Well, there are, and that's what we are looking at in this video. So let's look at the similarities. Again, still close your eyes, you don't need to open it. So first similarity is that both comes into play when there is relative velocity between the layers or point of contact, right? So we've seen that in solid, if something is stationary, unless one of the layers starts moving or tend to move, the friction does not come into picture. Same thing applies for both the cases. When we have relative velocity, only then the friction comes into picture. Both, of course, oppose motion, and both arise because of molecular attraction. So all these are very simple points. The difference is where the tricky thing is. First thing, area of contact. My question to you guys, if you are honest, so it will help you guys. Close your eyes, at least now. Area of contact. Who is dependent on area of contact, or who is independent of area of contact? Is viscous dependent on area of contact, or your solid friction dependent on area of contact? Viscous is dependent on area of contact. Why not solid? Try to recall, we have discussed this. Area of contact they are independent mostly because of the factor that the pressure will change. If I increase the area of contact, the pressure will drop. If I reduce the area of contact, the pressure will increase, right? Because of that factor. Second difference is relative velocity. So I'll give you guys a clue: kinetic friction versus viscous force. So kinetic friction is independent of your relative velocity up to certain limit. Of course, while viscous force is proportional to relative velocity. Okay, again, this goes back to your formulas and stuff. And the last difference is the normal force. So who is dependent on normal force? This you guys know. Solid friction is directly proportional to the normal force, right? So I will show you guys this. I hope you guys are able to recall this normal force and stuff. Okay, while your viscous force is not directly dependent on normal force, but rather on the velocity gradient and fluid properties. Okay, that's what we have been seeing. Okay, so now you can open your eyes and have a look at what I have typed in.